First Contact and Defiance. The command deck of the ESS Pathfinder fell silent as Captain Eliza Chen stared at the massive structure floating in the void. It shouldn't have been there. A geometric anomaly against Saturn's rings, its metallic surface reflecting starlight in patterns that made no mathematical sense. "Full stop," she ordered, her voice cutting through the tension. "Maintain distance and begin passive scans." The year was 2189, and humanity had spread throughout the solar system, establishing outposts on Mars, Venus, and the moons of Jupiter. The Pathfinder, Earth's most advanced reconnaissance vessel, had been dispatched to investigate unusual energy readings near Saturn. What they found exceeded anyone's expectations. Lieutenant Marcus Rivera, the ship's science officer, studied the incoming data with widening eyes. "Captain, the structure is approximately 3 kilometers in diameter, composed of materials not on our periodic table. And it's active." Before Chen could respond, the ship's communication officer jolted in her seat. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's not using any known frequency, but somehow our systems are translating it." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a figure that challenged human perception. Its body appeared vaguely humanoid, but with proportions that seemed deliberately wrong. Too tall, limbs too slender, with a face that shifted subtly as if refusing to be properly observed. "Humans of Earth," the figure spoke, its voice unnaturally smooth. "I am Overlord Tavik of the Valerian Empire. Your presence has been monitored since your first radio transmissions. Your system now falls under Imperial jurisdiction. Prepare for integration." Chen stood from her command chair, years of military discipline keeping her voice steady. "This is Captain Eliza Chen of the Earth Space Service. We are an independent species. We do not recognize your authority over our system." The alien's expression shifted in a way that suggested amusement. "Independence is not an option. The Empire spans 17,000 star systems. Your resistance would be inconsequential. You have 24 Earth hours to prepare your leaders for formal surrender negotiations." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Set course for Earth," Chen ordered. "Maximum speed. And prepare the first contact protocols." As the Pathfinder accelerated away from Saturn, 3 sleek vessels detached from the alien structure, their hulls shimmering with some form of energy shield. They made no move to pursue, merely maintaining position as silent sentinels. Back on Earth, the United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session. The Pathfinder's encounter had been broadcast globally, causing initial panic that gradually settled into a grim determination. Humans had fought each other for millennia. The thought of facing an external threat had long existed in their fiction, and now reality had caught up. Admiral William Koga, head of the newly formed Earth Defense Force, addressed the assembled leaders. "The Valerian vessels possess technology centuries beyond our own. Conventional military response would be suicide." He paused, looking at each face around the table. "But surrender is not an option." Dr. Sophia Patel, Earth's leading quantum physicist, stepped forward. "Their technology may be advanced, but it follows principles we can understand. The scans from the Pathfinder show vulnerabilities we might exploit. They rely heavily on quantum entanglement for their communications and weapon systems." "How does that help us?" asked the Chinese premier. "Because," Patel replied, "quantum systems are notoriously sensitive to observation. We've been developing quantum disruption fields for the past decade. They were theoretical weapons against advanced AI systems, but they might work against the Valerians." 20 hours later, as the deadline approached, Earth's response was transmitted to the alien structure near Saturn. Admiral Koga delivered the message personally from the bridge of the EDF flagship Defiance. "Overlord Tavik of the Valerian Empire, this is Admiral William Koga of Earth. We have considered your generous offer of integration into your empire and have prepared our response." On screens across the alien command center, HFY watched with mild interest as the human transmission continued. Humanity does not surrender. Not to storms, not to disease, not to our own failings, and certainly not to empires that mistake technological superiority for moral authority. We will defend our system. We suggest you reconsider your position. HFY's facial features rippled with what might have been surprise. In 17,000 conquered systems, no species had ever rejected integration. The standard protocol was always the same. Demonstrate overwhelming force, accept surrender, integrate the population and their resources. An unexpected response. He communicated to his subordinates. Prepare the first wave. A small demonstration should correct their misunderstanding. The 3 Valerian vessels near Saturn accelerated toward Earth, crossing the distance in hours rather than the months it would take human ships. Their arrival in Earth orbit was meant to be a show of force, 3 ships against a planet of billions. What they encountered instead was a hastily assembled defense grid. Every satellite, space station, and orbital platform had been retrofitted with Dr. Patel's quantum disruption technology. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't refined, but it was thoroughly human in its improvised efficiency. Commander Zith of the lead Valerian vessel observed the primitive defenses with something akin to pity. Begin the demonstration. Target their largest space station. The Valerian ship charged its main weapon, an elegant device that could reconfigure the molecular structure of its target. The beam fired, a lance of purple energy that should have reduced the International Space Station to its component atoms. Instead, the beam scattered harmlessly against an invisible field, dispersing into a spectacular but ineffective light show. Impossible, Zith whispered. They cannot have shielding technology. It's not shielding, his science officer reported, confusion evident. They've somehow created a field that disrupts quantum coherence. Our weapons, they simply fall apart at the subatomic level before impact. Across Earth, in bunkers and command centers, military and civilian leaders watched as the alien weapons failed against their hastily deployed defenses. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was a statement. Humanity would not go quietly. In the days that followed, the 3 Valerian ships maintained their position, neither attacking again nor retreating. Earth used this time to mobilize every resource, every mind, every factory. Schools became strategy centers. Manufacturing plants were converted to produce components for quantum disruptors, and scientists worked around the clock to reverse engineer what little they understood of Valerian technology from the Pathfinder scans. On the 7th day, a larger Valerian fleet arrived. 20 ships, each larger than the original 3. They took position around Earth's moon, a silent armada that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Overlord HFY's transmission reached every device on Earth simultaneously. Your resistance is unexpected, worthy of note in the Imperial archives, but ultimately futile. This fleet carries enough firepower to reduce your world to ash, regardless of your crude defenses. I offer one final opportunity for integration. The response came not from Earth's leaders, but from millions of individual transmissions, from personal devices, broadcast stations, university radio telescopes, and military communications arrays. A cacophony of human voices, all saying variations of the same message. We choose to fight. The counter-offensive. Dr. Sophia Patel hadn't slept in 3 days. The quantum disruption field had bought Earth time, but the Valerians were adapting. Their latest attacks had begun to penetrate the defensive grid, causing damage to orbital infrastructures. They were learning, evolving their approach. They think like a hive. She explained to Admiral Koga in the underground bunker that had become Earth's primary defense headquarters. Their tactics are elegant, mathematically perfect, but what? Koga pressed. But they lack creativity. They solve problems through iteration, not innovation. They try every possible variation until something works. Captain Chen, recently promoted after her encounter on the Pathfinder, leaned forward. You're saying they can't think outside the box? Exactly, Patel nodded. And humanity's entire history is about breaking boxes we were never supposed to escape. This insight catalyzed Earth's counter-strategy. While the Valerians expected humanity to develop better defenses, to hunker down and endure, Earth's scientists and military strategists were working on something entirely different. Operation Trojan Horse was born. On the surface, Earth appeared to be failing. The quantum disruption fields weakened strategically, allowing Valerian forces to believe their adaptations were working. Meanwhile, beneath the surface of Mars, in the underground colonies that the Valerians had dismissed as primitive outposts, humanity was building its response. The human counteroffensive began not with a bang, but with a surrender. Overlord Savik. Admiral Koga's transmission carried across space. The Earth Defense Council requests terms for conditional surrender. In his command center, Savik received the message with satisfaction. The pattern was reasserting itself. Resistance, followed by inevitable capitulation. He dispatched his integration specialists to Earth to begin the process, sending 3 transport vessels carrying 5,000 Valerian administrators. These vessels passed through Earth's defenses without incident, landing at designated sites around the planet. The Valerians, confident in their 17,000 system experience, disembarked following standard protocols. What they couldn't know was that every Valerian who set foot on Earth was being studied, not just their biology and technology, but their thought patterns, their cultural assumptions, the very way they processed reality. Dr. Patel's team had developed sensors that could decode the quantum states of Valerian neural networks, essentially reading their minds at the most fundamental level. "They don't understand us at all," she reported after the first day of data collection. "They see us as primitives who happen to stumble upon quantum disruption. They have no concept of our cultural diversity, our creativity under pressure, our ability to cooperate despite differences." The Valerians established their administrative centers, beginning the process of cataloging Earth's resources for imperial redistribution. They were methodical, efficient, and completely oblivious to what was happening on Mars. The first human offensive was launched 3 weeks after the surrender. Not from Earth, but from the supposedly primitive Mars colonies. A fleet of 300 small vessels, each barely larger than a shuttle, emerged from hidden underground hangars. These ships weren't built to fight the Valerian warships. They were designed to infiltrate them. The Mars fleet approached the Valerian armada using the disruption fields to mask their signatures. Each carried a payload developed using the intelligence gathered from the Valerian administrators on Earth, quantum resonance bombs that targeted the specific frequency of Valerian neural networks. Not to kill, but to communicate. Admiral Koga had been clear. "We don't need to destroy them. We need to understand them, and we need them to understand us." The resonance bombs detonated silently across the Valerian fleet, sending precisely calibrated quantum signals directly into the aliens' consciousness. Not an attack, but a first true communication, unfiltered by translation algorithms or cultural misunderstandings. Humanity transmitted not threats or demands, but its history, its art, its music, its contradictions and complexities. The full spectrum of human experience flooded into Valerian minds, overwhelming their ordered, hierarchical thought patterns. On the Valerian command ship, Overlord Savik experienced something unprecedented in Imperial history. He saw through human eyes, felt human emotions, understood for the first time what it meant to be part of a species that had evolved not through conquest, but through cooperation, competition, and creativity. The effect rippled through the Valerian fleet. Some ships went dark, their crews unable to process the influx of alien concepts. Others began broadcasting confused messages back to Imperial headquarters. A few turned their weapons on each other, as the rigid command structure fractured under the weight of newly introduced ideas like individual choice and self-determination. In Earth's defense headquarters, Admiral Koga watched the chaos with mixed emotions. Did we just break an entire civilization? Dr. Patel shook her head, studying the incoming data. No, We introduced them to something they've never encountered in 17,000 conquered systems. And what's that? Asked Captain Chen. A species that doesn't want to be part of their pattern. A species that would rather die fighting than surrender its identity. 3 days later, as Earth prepared for the Imperial reinforcements that would surely come, a single Valerian shuttle requested permission to land. It carried Overlord Xavik himself, now requesting audience not as a conqueror, but as a diplomatic envoy. In a secured facility beneath the ruins of what had once been Geneva, Xavik faced Earth's United Leadership Council. His form seemed less imposing now, more defined, as if he had chosen to be more comprehensible to human perception. In 17,000 systems, he began, his voice modulated to sound more natural to human ears. We have encountered species that fought and species that surrendered. We have never encountered a species that would rather reshape our minds than destroy our bodies. Admiral Koga leaned forward. We would prefer neither. We simply wish to remain ourselves. Xavik made a gesture that the humans now understood signified deep contemplation. The Empire functions on predictability, on patterns that repeat across civilizations. You do not fit any pattern. Your quantum attack was not an attack at all, but an invitation to understand. And do you? Dr. Patil asked. Understand us now? No, Xavik admitted. But I understand that you cannot be integrated without destroying what makes you unique. And that would violate the Empire's oldest principle, the preservation of valuable diversity. What followed was not surrender, not victory, but something unprecedented in Valerian history, a treaty between equals. Earth would not be integrated into the Empire, but would instead become the first autonomous associate, free to develop in its own way while engaging with the wider galactic community. As Xavik prepared to depart, Admiral Koga walked with him to his shuttle. Your empire has conquered 17,000 systems. What will they think of this exception? Xavik's form shifted slightly, a gesture humans were beginning to recognize as amusement. They will adapt. As you have shown us, adaptation is the key to survival. And perhaps in time, other systems may follow your example. You mean rebellion? Koga asked cautiously. I mean self-determination, Xavik replied. A concept we have much to learn about. As the Valerian shuttle lifted off, humanity looked toward the stars with new understanding. They were not alone, and they were not the most advanced civilization, but they had proven themselves to be something perhaps more valuable, unpredictable, innovative, and fundamentally unwilling to surrender their humanity. In the quantum communications that now linked Earth to the wider galaxy, a new term began to appear in Imperial documents, a designation for Earth that would eventually become something of a warning and a mark of respect throughout the 17,000 systems. They called it the world that thinks differently. And across the Empire, that was a revolution in itself.